There are 10 telltale signs that a man is a highly evolved and deeply masculine alpha male. We are going to explore what they are in this video, but before we do, let me just quickly share a story with you about me and my man many years ago. Oh my God. Okay, so listen to this. There I was on a cold winter night in the dodgy end of town. I wouldn't come to this part of town even during the day, let alone at night. But anyway, I was there with my husband and 2 of his guy friends. We were all in our 20s back then, so we were youngish. David, my now husband, had gotten some free tickets to some local kickboxing and MMA fights, and I had never watched fights live before, so I thought I would tag along. I had no idea what to expect. Obviously, being one of the few women in this packed makeshift stadium, I stuck really close to David and the couple of friends that we had. By the time we arrived, fights had already started and it had already begun to get crowded. We tried to push closer to the action, but there wasn't a whole lot of space. And then suddenly we spot this large table that was completely empty. So we moved closer towards it and we realized that it was a reserved table, but it was completely empty as opposed to all the other reserved tables around. We thought, well, since the fights have already begun and they began a while ago, we might sit there for now and we'll just wait till the people who reserved it came along, if they came along at all. After all, we got a better view of the fights by sitting there. These are the kind of silly decisions you sometimes make in your 20s, right? So we were watching the fights. About 10 minutes went by and suddenly I looked up and saw them walking towards us. It was a whole bikie gang in their leather vests and they were all tattooed, mean looking and huge. There were probably 30 of these mountains of flesh walking towards us. Most of them were taller than 6'2" and built like brick walls. They had these intense faces on, like at any moment they were ready to fight. I guess that's what they call a roid rage, right? As you can probably imagine, I froze in fear. Oh God, I remember thinking to myself. Before we knew it, the whole gang was at the table towering above us. That's when all 4 of us realized who this table belonged to. We managed to hijack the table of the local bikie gang, and now we were under some pressure to handle the sticky situation. As the leader of the gang approached us, I felt our 2 friends stand up in silence and they nervously took a couple of steps backwards. And the tension in that moment really became palpable. The next thing I knew, my husband David, who was my boyfriend at the time, stepped forward and obviously took it upon himself to deal with this potentially disastrous situation. "Hey guys," he said as he addressed the whole gang. David's calm and gentle voice broke through the tension and became the ripple of relief that spread through my anxiety-ridden body. I watched David with a little bit of ambivalence as he looked into the eyes of the leader of the gang. I looked at David and then at the guy, looked back at David and thought to myself, God help us. I hope this doesn't break out into an argument because he looks like he could crush any one of us with just a hand. "Oh, this is your table. Sorry guys. There must have been a mistake. Here you go," David said, and he never had an ounce of fear in his voice. And in that moment, my eyes snapped back towards the gang leader and I saw that the big man's eyes softened and his shoulders relaxed as he nodded at David. The whole gang of men behind him also relaxed and they nodded too. As the 4 of us walked away from the table, we looked at each other, acknowledging the fact that this situation could have turned out a lot worse. After all, the Australian news and media portrayed this particular bikie gang as a lawless group of criminals. I suddenly felt so safe that my man had just effectively dealt with the situation and protected all of us. He had successfully diffused the situation. Who knows how it could have turned out if he didn't have the intelligence, fearlessness, or the courage to deal with this in the way that he did. I always knew the man he was, but that night I felt safer than ever with him. I realized that not only did my man prove that he wanted to take care of me and his friends, he actually had the intelligence to approach this huge group of men, not with fear, but with a sense of calmness and decisiveness that I didn't have at the time, and neither did his 2 friends. I've come to realize over the years that in this day and age, what makes me feel safe as a woman is not just a man's size, although of course size helps us feel protected on the surface. What makes us know we have a masculine, high value, and evolved man is his intelligence. Intelligence can solve a lot of problems in this day and age that size and ego just can't. Anyone in this day and age can pretend to be an alpha male. A man can get a loan to buy a nice car, get a bunch of tattoos, walk and talk a certain way to appear like an alpha male. After all, many men want to appear and be alpha because they know that the strongest, fastest men get more women. However, here's the truth. It's only in sticky situations that a man's truest colours show up. A man isn't going to make you feel safe in the long term if he doesn't have the courage and the heart to deal with sticky social situations. The job of an evolved, deeply masculine alpha male is to be a leader when it's difficult. He cares about his tribe, and he has the courage and the emotional fitness to take risks for the sake of not only other people, but also for the sake of achieving great things. So let's talk about the 10 telltale signs that a man is a highly evolved and deeply masculine alpha male. And how many of these signs does a man need to have in order for you to consider him an evolved man? Well, let's just say that if he has just 3 of these, then he's doing pretty well. Okay, let's get started. Sign number 1, he can see and cut to the truth of any situation without resistance. In order to do great things, masculine men generally have to have a well-developed capacity to remove themselves from their feelings and be objective, if that's not already their default state. If a man needs to serve others, then he must let go of old beliefs in favor of what serves right now and in favor of the real truth in any situation. Can you really trust a man who refuses to acknowledge truths from many angles? No. A man like this tends to be constricted and small, and that's not his fault. It just means he may feel too vulnerable if he lets go of old beliefs and he doesn't want that kind of vulnerability. So, what is a good example of this? A good example would be a man who considers himself polyamorous and doesn't believe in monogamy. Maybe he's grown up with 2 very unhappily married parents, and consequently he doesn't trust monogamy. Maybe he sees polyamory as the only way in life. Or maybe he just wants to have a harem of women and uses polyamory to justify that desire. Whatever it may be, this man is polyamorous and doesn't believe in monogamy. An evolved man in this situation would be open to appreciating that there's truth in the statement that monogamy can serve in many situations too. In other words, he seeks to understand multiple perspectives because he knows that his perspective isn't the only one. The truth is not always easy to find, but he tries to seek it out. Sign number 2. He is less focused on short-term gratification. He plays the long game. A good example of people who think ahead and play the long game is chess players. They know that in order to be good at that game, they have to be steps ahead of their opponent. Also, consider successful long-term business owners. To run a successful business with integrity, he or she has to consider the future profits of the business and make these profits sustainable, as well as make sure that the business actually brings value to the customer long term. So the question becomes more like, how can I be in business in 10 years' time, as opposed to how do I make a killing today in the easiest way possible whilst postponing all the problems until tomorrow? This is a highly evolved endeavour, and you have to think long term to maintain a successful business. And it takes a lot more resources to build a profitable, long-lasting business from scratch than it does for someone to just inherit riches from their family. So sign number 3, he is not always defensive or riddled with fear. In other words, most of his actions and words come from a relaxed body, not from fear and defensiveness. We simply can't evolve if we're always in survival mode. I think we are all liable to becoming defensive in certain moments here and there, but what matters is that we don't live there most of the time. I don't think that if someone is defensive in one moment, that they're screwed for life, but I do know of people who are chronically defensive. Like you literally cannot say anything to them or approach them with anything, and nor can you trust them with anything because they just aren't ready for that. They cannot even be there for themselves. So how are they supposed to be there for others or to add value to others? Sign number 4, he is not afraid to cry. This means that he's not stuck in old rules about what he has to do to be a man. I think almost every woman would fall for a man who is strong, present, capable and driven, but who also isn't afraid to own his feelings. Am I right? A man who can be manly, but who can also cry, is evolved because that shows that he's not holding everything in and building resentment. It shows that he's accessible, trustworthy, and above all, that he's not only one kind of person all the time. Of course, if a man is always emotional and doesn't have any real purpose or personal direction that he's moving towards, then his emotionality will feel off-putting to you. A man who is authoritative yet can still feel deeply is just as evolved and masculine as any other, because without the capacity to feel these feelings, there would be nothing allowing him to connect deeply to others and to serve people. A man who has never had to feel deeply has never had to serve deeply. He may serve on a surface level, but it never goes deeper than that. By the way, if you haven't checked out my video on the 10 signs of a commitment-phobic man, then go watch it afterwards. I'll put the link in the description. Sign number 5. He sees the value of your feelings and intuition, and even better, he responds according to those. A man who is not attuned to others and is too stuck in himself will tend to disproportionately value his masculine views of the world and try to devalue the feminine viewpoint, since it's a different viewpoint from his own and probably also more emotional and therefore not easy for him to control. A man who is not putting all his energy into trying to control things for his own sense of certainty, a man who isn't always trying to feel worthy or trying to be right all the time, will probably be open-minded enough to zoom out and respect your point of view as a woman. He will see that as a man, his view of life and situations will be limited by his own male mindset and viewpoints. Sign number 6. He is not afraid of challenges and hardship, and maybe even welcomes challenges. Masculine energy becomes more intense and grows through challenge. This means that by default, most men seek out challenges from a young age. The key is to observe what kind of challenges he seeks out. A masculine man will literally become more masculine through the challenges thrown at him, provided he's not seeking silly, pointless challenges all the time. And that's what a weaker male will do. He will seek pointless challenges preferentially and run away from the challenges that his ego cannot handle. An evolved masculine alpha male will value the humility that comes with rising to challenges that he may initially fail miserably at. He will also choose challenges that build resilience over challenges that make his ego feel good for maybe 5 minutes. What counts as pointless or silly challenges? Well, competing on who can eat the biggest burger every week and feeling like a king for eating the biggest burger might be entertaining, but it's not serving others and it's not doing anything of real substance. Sign number 7, he seeks to contribute to life rather than take from it. An evolved alpha male can never remain alpha without the ability to contribute to his tribe and to the people around him. Evolved men usually don't get their thrills in life by going around taking from everyone to fill a hole that can never be filled. In fact, alpha males are a resourceful entity within themselves. Evolved men are more attuned to where people are at. They aren't reckless and they're more sensitive to social cues and consequences. So how would you know if a man is a perpetual taker or not? Well, men and women who see the world as a place to extract value from will simply give you a yucky or slimy feeling in your gut. So check in with your gut and also consider an alpha male's responsibility to contribute like this. Within a pack of wolves, for example, the alpha wolf has to be the one to think for the pack and protect the tribe. He's not just there for his own ego. If a rival pack of wolves showed up, it's the alpha wolf's job to deal with it and to lead the pack. And that reminds me, I've put together a popular video titled The 6 Behaviors You Should Never Tolerate in a Man. Go ahead and check it out if you haven't watched it already. I'll make sure to put the links below. Okay, sign number 8. He tries to open you by adding value, not through blind force. We as women have to keep our sexual resources and our emotions somewhat concealed. In other words, we need to be opened. Most women aren't just going to say yes to an offer of sex from a stranger on the street, whereas research has shown that many men would say yes to such an offer. So when we as women reveal ourselves, when we get turned on and let a man in sexually, it should be a gradual process. And most good evolved men would respect that and be attuned to that rather than trying to just blindly force a woman into sex. In fact, rape is usually, but not always, a tool used by low-value, low-status men. It's not a tool that high-value, evolved men use to get sex. So rather than resenting women their whole lives or resenting other men for getting more women than him, an evolved masculine alpha male will look to become more valuable overall as a man, and therefore he'll be able to have the skills to open any woman. Okay, sign number 9, he connects to the soul in others. You see, to influence anybody deeply, an alpha male would have to really connect to the soul of other men around him. He would have to inspire, and to do that, he has to reach deeply into someone and speak to who they are beneath all the surface small talk. Obviously, speaking to the souls of people is not something you want to do all of the time because it's not always appropriate. But if a man has the best intent to positively impact others and to lead others, he would need to have the ability to connect soul to soul. When a man or woman cares to connect to the soul of the people that they care about, it's a sign that they are not just in it for themselves. When a man can care in this way, he has a whole lot more power in a tribe and, of course, with his woman. This power may not be physical strength or good looks, but it's a spiritual power. It's intangible but meaningful. You see, it's not about proving anything to anyone. Instead, it's about what's real. It's not about the image. It's about the quality of connections you have in your life. It's not about me. It's about we. Okay, last sign. Sign number 10. He is not too stuck in one identity all the time. He is multidimensional. This means that he doesn't think he can be one person all the time and expect that one identity and personality to serve in every occasion. For example, is the gentle, nice guy personality always what will provide a hot sex life? Well, no. In fact, a primitive, dominant caveman might work very well at serving that part of a woman who really wants to be opened into total ecstasy by a dominant man. A gentleman is just not going to be able to provide that much juice in this scenario. Everything is contextual. Take, for example, someone who is being an idiot and treating a man disrespectfully for no reason. Should he continue being nice and expect that person to be nice in return? Not necessarily. That would be kind of silly, unattuned, and it would be a slap in the face to himself. He simply cannot expect that being kind and spiritual will work to get through to everyone in every context, because that's just one-dimensional. This doesn't mean that a man should just get wildly angry and punch everybody in the face. It just means that he respects his own anger enough to use the anger wisely as a resource to get through a bad situation. Okay, and that concludes the 10 telltale signs that he is a highly evolved, deeply masculine alpha male. As I mentioned earlier, if a man has 3 of these signs, then he's doing really well. A man does not need to have all 10 of these signs at any given time to be a highly evolved, deeply masculine alpha male. Okay, so let me quickly ask you a question. Which of these signs do you wish to see more of in men? And which of these signs actually resonated with you? Do leave me a comment below and let me know. By the way, if you haven't picked up a copy of my DVD, Becoming His One and Only, then it's a good time to do so. Inside this DVD, I want to teach you in detail the 5 secrets to having your chosen man fall in love with you and beg you to be his one and only. By the way, this DVD is completely free right now and no strings attached. So do take this opportunity to get yourself a copy before it disappears. You can get yourself a copy at boodvd.com. That's BHOODVD.com. Again, this DVD won't cost you a thing, and it's my gift back to the community that has served me so much. Oh, if you don't have a DVD player, that's no problems. We also have an online version of this too. Anyway, that's enough of my talking. I hope this video has helped you, and I can't wait to speak to you again very soon.
Hey, David and Renee. My name is Stacy Russo. I live in Vermont and I'm in your Facebook group. I've got Renee's video version of His One and Only, and I've read countless articles and all your emails, well, not all of your emails, but a lot of your emails. And they have all been immensely helpful in reconnecting me with my true self, my higher self, my high value self, and doing more things to stay in that vibration and create the reality that I want. So they've been very helpful in me not being in reaction mode and to really digging into my truth. So thank you. I'm so grateful for that.